Good morning, everyone, and on behalf of Maxis, I would like to thank Bursa Malaysia and Hong Leong Mia Bank for inviting us along here today. I've been asked to basically share some of the insights, in part about the role that digital and technology is playing in disrupting markets and creating new business opportunities, but also in terms of how Maxis is facing into that challenge and significant opportunity. So in terms of the marketplace, we're at a unique position or inflection that only comes around every 40 or 50 years. If you think about, we talk about the Industrial Revolution 4.0, these digital technologies are starting to transform and create an environment where, because of hyperconnectivity and the ability to connect high compute power and devices and people anywhere, anytime, we're seeing significant opportunities in terms of the democratization and the transformation of industry. Whether we look at, if we take a look at the manufacturing, for example, in the 18th century we had the mechanization period. That moved to automation in the 20th century, and now in the 21st century we're seeing digitalisation take place. If you think about in manufacturing, just something as simple as 3D printing, what has that meant in terms of to disruption of historical supply chains or value chains? So in the old days, you would have come up with a design or a prototype or an idea. You would have done a lot of prototyping work. You would have sent it off to a manufacturer. They would have come back with some recommendations. They would have had to assemble manufacturing equipment and die, etc., to cast or configure. And then there would have been a lot of iteration, and probably that time frame may have taken 12, 18 months to go from concept to actually product. In 3D printing, for example, you can now design a standard or design a concept, or you can download something from the internet. You can rapidly print that in location, and you can deploy it. And whether that is manufacturing equipment or pharmaceutical goods or even machinery, it significantly disrupts the whole supply chain. And we're seeing this time and time again in multiple industries, and whether that's the media industry, where it used to be you had pre-programmed broadcast rights, so if you wanted to see a program, you had to be there at a certain time, your TV switched on. Nowadays, you consume it where you are, when you want it, how much you want, etc. So in that time of rapid change, what is driving it? We talked about hyperconnectivity, but really what is driving it is hyperconnectivity is just an enabler. If you think about when 4G came into the market, typically if you wanted to do something on the internet, you'd go home, you'd sit on your computer, you'd browse, you maybe do some banking transactions. But with 4G, suddenly you had high-performance networks, you had high speed, relatively low latency, to the point where suddenly you could start to consume services or interrogate or to buy products and services. So with 4G, Uber appeared, Airbnb appeared, online banking, anytime, anywhere, became intrinsic in terms of how we live. So hyperconnectivity we always talk about as if it's sort of passé, but it is the fundamental building block that allows transformation and innovation on top of it. And at Maxis, we see connectivity as not a utility, but we see it as a platform. We see it as a platform to build and innovate new products and services for the next millennium and for organizations. It's also a platform that allows anyone, anywhere to create and innovate new businesses. And whether that's through accessing cloud, which in the old days you would have had to go out and paid for servers and hired people to manage those servers and write your code. Now you can spin up as much compute power and you can scale it infinitely at any time and simply pay for what you use. In IoT, now everything is becoming connected. Everyone is becoming connected, whether it's through personal wearables, whether it's through devices, whether it's through smart buildings, whether it's through smart lighting that comes on only when you're there. Everything is becoming connected, but more importantly, it's now creating a significant amount of data. So we're starting to see now that data is becoming ubiquitous, it's becoming incredibly available, but we still only use about 80% of the data that is being generated. And you're seeing this go exponentially in terms of the number of devices connected. So that then leads you to the algorithms that are now being created to think about how do you gather that data, how do you distill that data, how do you gain insights, and then how do you apply those. And that data is now starting to create very personalized experiences and very personalized services. So we see the next big evolution also. So you've got cloud, you've got IoT, you've now got big data and artificial intelligence. And then finally, the part that brings it all together is robotics. Because with intelligence, with data, with sensors in the field, you can now create an ability to drive autonomy or autonomous environments. So if you think about the energy or the mining sector, 20 years ago, if you went to a mining site, there would be people driving major excavation equipment, there would be people running production lines, there would be people looking at health and safety, there'd be monitoring services. Now, and there may be 1,000 people at any one point in time on that mine site. Today, you can go to mine sites in Western Australia, for example, and there's no one there. It's fully autonomous, the trucks are self-driven, the conveyor belts that are processing the minerals are being managed from 1,000 kilometres away. So what it's driving is that this hyperconnectivity is allowing you to drive new ways of doing business, to drive significant productivity, but to start to run 24/7 operations, or even to reimagine how businesses could be versus how they are today. So these Industrial Revolutions 4.0 technologies, the seismic change that's taking place is happening across every industry. I talked about the energy sector, I talked about the manufacturing sector, but it's just as applicable in transport, it's just applicable in education. Maxis, for example, we have deployed E-Class offering. We deploy it as a community service. It's about providing rural and remote communities access to the very best content and education and curriculum around Malaysia. We do it as a contribution by Maxis back to the community. And we work with organisations like UTM to create that content, to work with the PhD organisations, to deliver the very best around maths, science and English services to the most remote parts of Malaysia. But what it's driving is a new way for people to start to think about education. So rather than have to physically go to a school, have a lecturer or teacher turn up, now that education and those course materials and curriculum are available to anyone at any time who wishes to participate. So we've now got 20,000 pupils by the end of this year will be participating. We've got 80 schools around Malaysia, and we will continue to roll this out as part of what we feel is an enabler and a great application in how we use technology to develop our people and our capabilities. But let's take the banking sector. I mean, the banking sector has historically had a powerful grip in terms of financial transactions, and whether that's borrowings, whether it's investing, whether it's your own personal loan environments or saving environments. But you're now starting to see disruption coming into play. You're seeing fintechs, as they're called, coming in. And what they're doing is, rather than, I guess, the historical approach that banks had, why did people go to banks? Because they had trust. They were mandated or supported by the government. They had, over a long period of time, built up trust, and trust is so critical in the banking sector. But that trust now is being eroded. But it's being eroded by social networks. It's being eroded by peer groups who are saying, I have used this, it was a great experience, I would suggest you use it. So it's becoming word of mouth, and as a result of that, people are now jumping onto platforms. And those platforms are generating insights in terms of people's behaviour, which allows these fintechs to offer new innovative products at a time, in a context, when you need it, at a value point that you believe is compelling, and it's disrupting a lot of the financial institutions. So that real-time consumer behaviour around, I want it now, I want it when I want it, how I want it, and in the shape, and I only want to pay for it up to this amount. It's becoming very disruptive. So the power is shifting from the institutions in any walk of life to the consumer. And these platform players that are leveraging technology, whether it be cloud or whether it be the insights from big data, are the ones at the forefront that's grabbing the limelight. So in cloud, for example, 80% of enterprises by 2025 will have at least 60% of their workloads running in a cloud infrastructure of some description. That's massive because instead of large capital investments, they now can completely variabilize their cost models. As business is good and capacity is required, they turn it up, and as things become tougher, they dial it down. The same goes in IoT. We'll have 31 billion devices by the end of this year in operation around the world, all with a pulse, all generating data, and that data generates insight. So those organizations that can embrace it, capture it, and apply it to new business models will be the ones that win. In a recent study from the World Economic Forum, they have defined a framework that allows the measurement of the readiness of digital technology adoption within countries. And what this really is about is looking at measures that allow or define how a country can capitalise and improve its future production and opportunities, mitigate risks and challenges, and be resilient and agile in responding to future shocks. The framework itself sort of uses two drivers. It looks at a structure of production, or a country's current baseline of production and how it operates at scale. And it looks at the drivers of production. So what are the key enablers that position the country to capitalise and leverage the technologies of the fourth industrial revolution? That study has identified that ASEAN countries in the main are relatively immature or at the early stages of that adoption curve. However, Malaysia is actually in the top quadrant. It's one of the leaders in terms of adoption of technologies to drive innovation and to build the workforce and capabilities of the future. And a great part of this has to go down to the government's policies today in terms of fostering competition, encouraging innovation, and the reintroduction of STEM in terms of how we build our future capabilities and talent. But the fundamentals are now in place, and I believe and we believe that Malaysia is ideally positioned to catapult ahead of many of its peers in the region. And as a result of this, we will see job creation, we will see higher skills in jobs, and we'll see wealth and a lifting of the general standards of environment around the country. So what does all this mean to Maxis? Well, I guess at Maxis, we historically have been known as the leading mobile operator in Malaysia, whether it be Ookla or MCMC reports, the fastest upload speeds, it's the most innovative in terms of how we package. We also extract the highest ARPUs, and that's a reflection of how people value quality and the value experience that we have tried to innovate with. But in 2018, we made a change, particularly in the enterprise. We started to pivot towards becoming an ICT company. And that's not easy. Many telcos or service providers around the world have tried. The aspiration has been there, the strategy has been there, but the execution has failed. And there's a lot of experiences on why. But why do we want to do this? Because we believe with hyperconnectivity and as a platform, the network, you can build these value-added services and capabilities. So as we sit here, we look at how do we monetize IoT? How do we help organizations extract that data and generate better insights, more efficiency, better productivity, better health and safety in terms of the people in the field? How do organizations start the journey to cloud? It's one thing of being a big corporate, you've got massive resources, but if you're a small SME or a mid-sized organization, I hear about cloud, I hear about digitization, how do I get there? So we at Maxis are building the capabilities to help and enable organizations on that journey. But it's not just about the infrastructure. So we see the network as a platform, then you've got IoT, which generates the sensory information that allows you better insights, Cloud democratizes the ability to accelerate new businesses and allow challengers to come in and challenge the very biggest in the industry and to disrupt. But we also see that there's the services on top. So, for example, we have a number of customers. We launched a number of years ago our e-commerce and capabilities and our analytics service as a service. And these companies have now moved beyond the shores of Malaysia. So if you look at Cecily, for example, a female lingerie company in Malaysia doing very well, that company had aspirations to go international. Maxis helped them do that, and at the recent Asia Pacific Awards for e-commerce in Singapore, they were recognized for being best in class across Asia in terms of how they have gone out, built a brand, built a marketplace, and grown beyond the bounds of Malaysia to become a truly international company. We have so many other organizations that we're helping in this regard. But this is not a new strategy. As I mentioned earlier, many have tried, few have succeeded. If you look at some of the global leaders around the market, and personally I was involved with the Telstra journey, in 2008, Telstra had attached services of ICT services of around 8%. So that means for every dollar of revenue they generated in connectivity, 8% was value-added services. Over a period of the next 8 to 10 years, Telstra has grown that to an attach rate of 50%. That services and ICT business has grown from $500 million in 2008 to $2.8 billion today. So there is exponential growth potential, and we're seeing that. So not only are we seeing disruption in the market, but it's a little bit like the gold mine, the gold age. It wasn't the miners that made all the money, it was the ones selling the shovels. So we're in there enabling the industry, we're enabling the people who are out there looking to disrupt and innovate, and we're taking them on the journey, and we're coming through with innovative approaches in terms of how we deliver those services. It is as a service, and it is on a consumption basis. So I guess the last year we've seen ourselves going through some major changes as an organisation. We are transforming our products. We're moving away from a mobile-centric to a fully converged. We've completely changed our sales organisations. We're moving away from transactional to being consultative and investing deeply in terms of being inquisitive about our customers and the pain points. We've built an industrial global capability in terms of service delivery, so it's repeatable, it's high quality, it uses digital tools and assets to allow you to self-serve. Our operating model recognises the complexity in which we work, and therefore we bring all of the parts of Maxis together, our engineering teams, our sales teams, our consulting teams, our pre-sales and architecture teams, to deliver and focus around the customer. Our people. We have doubled the population of the enterprise organisation in the last 12 months. So we're creating jobs in Malaysia. But I think what's more important, 80% of the new hires that have come into Maxis in the enterprise division are bachelor degree qualified or better. The average age demographic now in Maxis is 33 years of age. We're a very young organisation. I, by far, am one of the oldest in the organisation. I think I lift the age group about 10 years. But it's also an employee engagement is running about 86%. So we've got highly educated, highly engaged, and a young workforce who are eager to learn and grow. We think they're the biggest asset that we have. We've also invested heavily in our systems and process, automation across everything, CRM, CPQ, our billing platforms, our customer management platforms, our service management platforms, everything is being transformed as we speak. We're digitizing the entire organisation end-to-end in enterprise. But we're also in the market. We're sharing the stories and testimonials of our customers. We're sharing the successes that they're seeing and working with Maxis in terms of the impacts and outcomes that they're achieving. We launched this year for the first time the inaugural Maxis Spark Business Summit. And this was really about bringing thought leadership from around the world to Malaysia and the great stories and lessons from Malaysia in terms of sharing. We believe that we are a community, and as a community we will be successful. But we also have to learn from the best that's going on. At this summit we had over 700 delegates, CEOs, industry leaders. We had 25 international speakers, and the session ran for a whole day. Feedback has been incredibly positive. But we also had, and we have invested significantly in terms of our own capabilities. Partnerships, as you heard earlier, are absolutely critical in our minds. So this year, or last year, we also signed up partnerships with global leaders in the technology area to build innovative new solutions and be the market first. So for example, we launched last week and announced last week a partnership with Microsoft, and a first for Malaysia in terms of the new unified communications collaboration with connectivity services. But we're also partnering with state and local government to accelerate technology adoption, and we're partnering with the telco providers around the industry. Maxis wants to deliver fibre and connectivity from wherever it is available. We're building aggressively on our own. We're building our own next generation fixed infrastructure network, which allows microservices to be delivered, and it's fully converged with mobile. But we also know that there's great assets around the country that should be leveraged, and we shouldn't be looking to duplicate what's already in place. So I guess we're on a journey. We see huge potential and huge opportunity in the Malaysian market in terms of the opportunities that digitization and disruption can bring along with it. So I guess that was the points I want to talk, so hopefully I'm not too far over time.
Hi, thank you so much for your presentation, Paul. So just maybe a bit of my question, because previously we've seen like some partnership between Maxis and Astro providing a bundling service. Okay, so besides focusing on ICT as well, like, I mean, with digitalization, is there like any potential for Maxis to penetrate into like another vertical of consumer life, such as entertainment? So maybe there's possibility on we've seen Maxis potentially collaborate with local media players like the likes of Media Prima. So this is like in line with what other giant players such as AT&T did in United States and so on. So what's your view on that?
We are actively collaborating with Astro, obviously a sister company to Maxis. Our broadband services, for example, Astro are bundling the broadband services with their subscription services and taking them to market. We are looking at also how do we incorporate content as a key proposition for our consumer markets. Not just consumer, recognising as well that micro is also such a small office, home office type user, so there's consumer type behaviours and needs and requirements. So we are actively looking at how do we collaborate, partner with Astro, but other organisations as well.